Right. Okay. Feet about hip width apart, measuring from the outside of your foot or the midline or the inside, as I tend to do. These parallel lines is what we're looking for. Weight a little bit forwards and hips dropping back a little bit, turning in the center of the body. A couple of slow, gentle breaths. That helps you just to focus your attention. And what we want to do is we bring our attention in to our body and focus on very particular things, our weight sinking down, the alignment of our body, turning in the center of our body. A relatively small range of things to focus our attention on initially. And then gradually look to go from that very focused attention to something that doesn't lose that awareness that you've just built up, but it's much broader, much more. It's almost like a balloon or a bubble expanding. So you start to become aware of what's happening in your ribs, your shoulders, your arms. Raising your arms a little. Aware of the pull of gravity working through your body. It was a bit different in your arms to say building your hips. And then just letting your hands drop down. So after a little while doing Tai Chi, you get a kind of intuitive sense for the feel of the movement that you're looking for, the feeling of the postures that you're looking for. Or if you prefer, you might think of the shape of the postures and the effect that has, or whatever. So these are ways of focusing your intent. And if you focus onto that shape, then you may notice that your body begins to flow into that shape. And then your hips drop back down a little bit. And that process can continue all the way through the session. And you'll find it works more easily, more smoothly, with movements that you're more feel a greater sense of connection with. The images and so on and so forth. But it should also be applied to the real fundamentals. So there are certain shapes, certain focuses that are consistent. The basic principles of rooting, of the significance of legs, hips, and center, the importance of just being aware of these small movements and changes within the body, how they are beginning to link up with each other. The focusing of your attention are all very much things that are consistent from one movement to another. Other things, as we've noted before, will be, in some cases, quite unique to a particular exercise. Not always unique, but certainly not necessarily something you'll find in all the exercises. Coming out of this, you should find that there are other things that become constants. Changing now to the wild goose. The flow of the movement. Notice that I didn't start off by talking about the flow of the movement. It's an outcome of these other constants. Maybe your breathing again is something that you become aware of, the rhythm of expansion and contraction as your body settles in. Body and mind settle together. And then parting the clouds. Another constant that we become aware of is this sense of the still quality that exists within the movement. This side by side, if you like, or as an integral part of practice. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Notice your attention has drifted away. Recognize that the mechanism, if you like to think of it like that, of bringing your attention back is as crucial a part of the practice as the mechanism of conditioning your legs. One more time. and then changing other things we become aware of, the range of movement, moving to the soft boundary, moving by bringing together different types of small movement within the body, binding them with our awareness. One more time. And then changing, circling palms. At the turn, if it's comfortable. And changing sides. And if it's comfortable, turn. Now, rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Remembering, very careful with your back, especially as you coming up with another point of focus, which is allowing your hips to drop back, allowing gravity to pull your hips down, feeling the links, the connections, the shoulders down to your hips, so that as your hips drop down, the shoulders are very gently drawn up. And then polishing the table. One more time. And check. I use the term binding for the way that our attention to something, to these small movements, can sort of bring them together into a whole. When we bring our attention to something, we're more aware of it, and when we're more aware of it, we're more engaged with it. If you go to watch a band or an orchestra play, and you're watching them, and you suddenly decide that you're going to watch, the guitarist or the drummer or something like that, you'll hear the sound better. And not only that, but when you broaden that awareness to include the guitar, you'll hear the interaction of them better. And in the same way, these smaller movements that we make in Tai Chi, the opening and close of the quad, the small changes within the body, are brought together, bound together through the medium of our awareness. Okay, so what should we do? Back to the parallel stance. Let your weight sink down, push up, and going into the wild goose, feel that expansion through your body. Sink down. This time let your hands drop all the way down, and then turn as you push up. So we've got two things going on here that I mentioned earlier. One is the expansion and contraction of our bodies, which is pushing our arms out and causing them to swing up, and then the contraction, lowering them down. The other is that turning in the center of our body. And when we bring those two together, the expansion, the contraction, the turning, we get this movement. Well, we get a movement. We get several different movements because we also now have a shape for the overall movement. And by expanding and contracting, by turning, we then have something to allow to flow into that shape. This time when you turn, allow your rear hand to come into your elbow, and now it becomes more of a push-pull, or your arms are going through a semicircle, so they're working in a circular pattern. Notice now my arm comes up, my elbow drops, my hand arrives at my shoulder, and I turn. Pushes my hand forward, swings my other hand back, which in its turn swings up, comes into my shoulder, and then gets pushed forward. Just bring your hand in so it's on the front of your shoulder, and then as you turn, you'll feel more of a sense of the push. The front of your shoulder, turn, and push. So part of the shape of the movement is the structure that we're working from, the precision of the movement. It partly comes from our ability to observe the movement. What is going on here? What can you see? What can't you see? One more time. So move your weight into your right foot, raise the left heel, and then a gentle push from your right into the left, hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. Once again, come around, notice how the center turns. So from the side, as I come around, my hip there comes around, and my hip seems to push on my elbow, and then pull on it. And same thing on the other side. One more time. And then let your hands drop down and swing out to the front. Dropping all the way down. Notice how they angle out slightly from my shoulders. Swinging down and up. Drawing your arms through by moving your weight, softening and rotating in the middle of your body. Nice and relaxing your shoulders to see where that gets your arms. One more time to each side. Cow gazes at the moon. Shake out. So all of those movements involve a turning in the center. So, for instance, how do we start? Yeah. So the swinging arms exercise. Just this was the movement, expanding and contracting, and then I could do this. So from this movement, let me just forget about my hand on the left. Just watch this hand. This is the basic movement. I can do this if I change my intent. And I add in maybe a little bit of change in the shoulder. If I turn a little bit further and move my weight, I can do this. And really, the only significant change from this to cow gazes at the moon would be my intention to let my arm go right further. There, it's almost the same as hitting the ball, but rather than stopping there, I direct it out there. And so on and so forth. So, you know, there are other changes that we begin to observe particularly in the upper body, but there's also these constants where one of the things that will really make the difference is what you intend to do with it. So again, you know, that focus intent is very important. Okay, so have your right foot forwards, transferring your weight. As we start doing this, there's a lot of attention on our stance, where the feet are, correct placement of the feet, correct directioning of the feet, and as much as possible maintaining an alignment with your upper body that goes straight ahead. So if you're facing a computer screen, for instance, you want your hips and your shoulders in line with that screen as much as possible. It's problematic because this can happen very easily. I'll show you from the front. There, it's easy for the knee to get pulled in because if you think about when we were doing hitting the ball in front of the shoulder, when we turned further in the center, it actually did something to the leg. So if you want to maintain this alignment, and be careful with this because it takes a while to actually work your way through this. I come closer. I go forwards. There's a tendency for my knee to collapse inwards. You can see there in the back leg. So what I do to correct that is I rotate the knee outwards. And what I try to do is not 1, 2, but both together. So I try and keep my knee. You can see a bit better now. There. So the tendency is for the knee to do this. The rotation outwards helps to correct that. And the more I try and turn towards the screen, the more likely I am to get that kind of effect. So the more I have to rotate the knee out. So that's quite a difficult addition to the movement. You have to get used to this rotation out. It will almost certainly stretch out the muscles on the inside of your leg and condition tone the ones on the outside of your leg. It is quite significant. You don't want to get into the habit of letting your knees twist in. It's not too bad in this instance because there really isn't much weight in your leg. So it's not like you're putting a lot of pressure on them, but it does have this sort of detrimental effect on your structure overall. So it's something to gradually build in so that when we make the correction to align our shoulders and our hips, this is important, to the wall or whatever in front, I'm not doing this. This is This is my shoulders coming into line, but my hips are still out of line. You can see, I mean, it's exaggerated, but it's twisted up my body. So it's a turn from there, and at the same time, that rotation out of the knee to there. So it's quite a tricky movement, which is why I don't put too much emphasis on it to begin with, but it's something that you want to build in. Now beginning to raise your toes and your heel. Here you can turn the front foot out, so you will turn slightly, and that will help to bring your heel up. And then stepping in. Shake out. So then same thing with the front foot forward, with the left foot forwards, front foot forwards. Transferring your weight. 70% in your back leg when you sink your weight back, so 70, 30. 60% in the front leg when you move your weight forward, 60, 40 at this point. Raising your toes and your heel. Be careful when you do that. A very common habit that comes from just everyday walking is to lean rather than just my back knee goes forward, that raises the heel. I just flex my front ankle, that raises the toe. But what we want to, especially when we start to take the step, is we'll often do this first. Because that's what we would do in everyday walking. We'd kind of lean into the step a little bit. I forgot which was, I've got this one. And then stepping in. So with this stepping, the step itself isn't so much a swing of the leg as it is a contraction of your leg between hip and foot. And then an expansion. And then just take that into taking a few steps through. You'll see now as my foot comes in, it then goes forwards and swings out a little bit. And then go in the other direction. Have your right foot forwards. drop your weight back. Pigeon spreads its wings, so folding your hands over your belly, push forward so you feel your hands being pushed forward, and just open and return. So this time the rhythm of expansion and contraction is being generated again from the legs, from that push from the legs, but rather than our intent directing it up through the body, which we do in some of the earlier exercises like the wild goose, now we feel that expansion and we get it to push us forwards and then backwards. And then fisherman castanet, so let your hands drop down. Move forward, leaving your hands slightly behind for just a moment, and then allowing them to be pulled through. And then pushing wave. Once again, as with hitting a ball in front of the shoulder, we can feel a kind of connection from our elbow to our hip. My hip goes forward, and that seems to push my elbow out. The hip goes back, it draws my elbow back. But the elbows will go out just slightly as well. So there's a little bit more than that going on. But just see if you can feel that connection. Remember, you're facing straight ahead. Now this time, as you start to come back, leave your right hand out there and turn. So now your left hip is drawing your left elbow back. And we have repulse the monkey, combining that earlier exercise that we did without the weight moving with the transfer of your weight. This time, as you go back and turn, let the turn Raise your toes. Turn the front foot out a little bit. As you go forwards and turn, your heel comes up. So the same part of the body moves both arms and legs. It's the turning in the center. And then stepping in. Okay, and shake it up. So in terms of the focusing of our attention, that initial very directed focusing of our attention, then the center part of the body becomes a very important point to focus on, and really one that we don't want to ever lose touch with. And from there, we start to develop that more open attention, more I wouldn't say undirected, but the very directed gathering of our attention is in a way a little bit closed. But what it does help to do is to recognize key parts of the body, and in the process of, say, for instance, being aware of the middle part of your body, you realize, well, when it turns, my shoulder moves. When my shoulder moves, my arms move. So there's a natural progression from that very focused attention to a more generalized, a more inclusive attention, I suppose you could say. So, Pigeon spreads its wings, left foot forwards. And then change into fisherman castanet. Even though we're not turning the center, that is also quite significant, because pigeon spreads its wings, this movement and the next push and wave are all movements where the arms go forwards and backwards rather than through any other shape. So the fact that the center isn't turning is hugely significant. Good, and then push and wave. And then we pulse the monkey. Your body expands, contracts as you go forwards and turn, and then continues into another expansion. Contracts. Expands, that movement driven from your legs. Transfer of your weight. Given direction and given shape through the center of your body. So when we talk about using our awareness, we're not restricting our awareness to being in our brain. It's all through our body. And a key point of focus is going to be the center between hips and waist. You could argue also that the expansion and contraction are also very linked to the center, because we talked about pushing from the legs, but here imagine if you sink down in the front leg and you had a ball in that center part of your body, it would be compressed and then it would expand. It would be compressed and then it would expand. Raising your toes and your heels. And then step through. And going back in the other direction. Make sure you get your foot into position first, then move your weight, turning in your center, and notice how that moves your shoulders, your elbows, and finally your hands. One more in this direction. So now, going forwards again, move the weight forwards, return. Notice that this hand, your left hand has come through. Bring your foot in. Step, plant the foot down, lower the toes. Turn the front hand, the left hand palm up as your rear hand comes to your shoulder. Now you move the weight and you turn. Do the same thing again. You turn, heel comes off the ground. Foot comes in, forwards, left hand comes to your shoulder. Move the weight and turn. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, finishing with the turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we go in the other direction. So if you're going back, you go into your back foot. And the same thing. 1, you raise your toes. And that turns your body And that means that your left hand or your rear hand comes to your shoulder. 2, you bring the foot in. 3, you push the foot out, plant it down. 4, you move the weight. And 5, you turn. And watch what happens. 1, I turn, that raises my toes. It also swings this hand, my rear hand out. 2, I bring the foot in. 3, I step out and I plant the foot down. 4, I move the weight. 5, I move. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. A couple more times. Good. And then just bring your feet down. Shake it. And you can see by moving my foot in that way, I've managed to crease up the floor covering. Just get rid of that, those creases. But that's quite good because it means that I was actually doing something with my foot. Okay. Just rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. The other side. And then on to your back. Around your hips. Your legs. Belly. And the upper part of your chest. Maintaining this focus of attention is a very difficult thing to do for everybody, I think. And what we don't always appreciate, I think, is that it is as capable of being trained as, say, for instance, the ability to, I don't know, lift your leg up or something like that. If you wanted to do something with your leg and you weren't able to do it, you would do exercises to strengthen the muscles of your legs, for instance. And then you could run upstairs or whatever it is you're able to do. An American meditation teacher called Tara Brach used an interesting phrase in the guided meditation that I came across. She was talking about this process of returning our attention to our bodies. And she used the phrase that we're building a muscle for homecoming. In other words, when we practice bringing our attention back, our ability to bring our attention back improves, just as our ability to raise our leg improves if we train the appropriate muscles. I suppose if you're going to be more accurate and picky about it, what you're really training with the return of your attention, largely what you're training, but perhaps not all, but is your nervous system and the synapses. But you are training something. You're developing this habit of bringing your attention back. It's also true the opposite way around, that if we don't practice bringing our attention back, just like if you didn't practice walking upstairs, but just sat in a chair all day watching television, you'll soon lose the ability to walk upstairs. So in a sense, whatever we're doing, we're practicing. Whether we realize what we're doing or not, and whether it's a good thing to be practicing is a different matter. We are actually practicing at that point. So embrace tiger, return to mountain is a way of practicing in a very focused way that returning process that we can then learn to take into our lives. So let your hips drop back and then embrace tiger, return to mountain. And just stand. Shake out. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.